David referred to soldiers who refuse orders. I mentioned Joe Clemson, who had hoped to be on the panel this afternoon. Unfortunately, Joe is facing so many commitments he's not been able to make today, and sends his apologies and best wishes to the conference. I don't know if people heard Start the Week on the radio at the beginning of this week. It was a pleasant start to the week because Joe was in Fighting for Peace, interviewed for half an hour on why he'd taken that decision. So we do miss Joe's presence, but certainly not his ongoing presence in the movement. So I'd like to hand over to Steve, and if people are thinking about questions that they may have or points that they'd like to make, please do that now so we can make best use of the time that is available.
Thank you, Kevin. I think the most striking thing about imperialism in the 21st century is its continuity in classical imperialism. This time, a century ago, imperialism was utilising military force to dominate developing and colonial countries, so that there were major imperialist campaigns against the rising national movement in China, Iran, Ireland, India, and so on. This century, this year, we see equally military action against anti-colonial struggles, covert in Latin America, open in the Middle East, covert in Iran, and open in Afghanistan. Last century, this time, imperialism was utilising economic power to prevent countries achieving economic development based on their own needs. So that a century ago, imperialism was attacking the newly formed Soviet Union. A century ago, Mexico was prevented from carrying through its own land reform and measures such as nationalising the oil industry. This century, this year, we see United States imperialism trying to force China to devalue its currency, which would massively reduce the value of US Treasury bonds that the Chinese hold and would effectively be robbing the Chinese people. This century, we see Iran being prevented from even developing, or attempt to prevent it from even developing its own nuclear power. This by countries which have got both nuclear power and nuclear weapons. Last century, imperialism was attempting and did carve up the boundaries of states and nations and sovereign peoples in order to maintain its dominance. So you had the terrific crime against humanity, the partition of India, or you saw the Balfour Declaration, which set up a century of war and oppression in the Middle East. This century, we see imperialism having promoted sectarian strife in Iraq, resulting in tens and hundreds of thousands of casualties as a result. And this century, we continue to see the defence of the dispossession and oppression of the Palestinian people. So, has anything really changed? Mercifully, there have been some changes, and particularly the biggest breakthrough for humanity has been the decline of British imperialism. Insofar as that this country of just a few tens of millions of people is occupying and controlling literally hundreds of millions of people in this world. But fortunately, the liberation movements over the last century have gained ground, and so we have seen the continuing, irreversible and extremely welcome decline of the British imperialism on the world stage. However, it continues to act as an outhouse for American policy. It continues to have the fourth highest military budget in the world, and it continues to show all the imperialist arrogance that it ever possessed, even if some of it is rather shamefaced. The similar process has happened in a whole number of European powers, and obviously last century was the American century. But I think what's different this century is that exactly American imperialism is beginning to decline. It's no longer simply able to outcompete its competitors. According to the IMF, China will have the largest economy in the world by 2016, surpassing the United States. That's one of the reasons why there is serious discussions within the ruling circles in the United States about the need for much more aggressive action against China. And obviously since the 1970s, the United States have suffered, the United States imperialism has suffered a number of important setbacks, such as in Vietnam, Lebanon. It had serious problems in Iraq, and it is stalemated in Afghanistan. So we are witnessing the decline of imperial power, but unfortunately these things are long and painful processes, and what we do makes a difference. How we join in with people around the world in accelerating the decline of these powers is very significant. So we have to have a sense of urgency about what we do, that we are literally engaged in a life or death struggle, particularly for people in Afghanistan and the Middle East. So I just want to quickly run through why we have to have this sense of urgency about Afghanistan and Libya. In terms of Afghanistan, the current situation is that Karzai is in Islamabad this weekend, and the Pakistan military is now openly participating in attempts to achieve reconciliation with the Taliban. You have Burhanuddin Rabbani, right, who's formerly president of Afghanistan, is head of the Afghan High Council for Peace. He's having preliminary meetings with the Taliban, including Mullah Omar and the Quetta Shura. Haqqani representatives, another section of the resistance in Afghanistan, recently were welcomed in Kabul. Alan Juppé, the French foreign minister, says that talks are underway between Pakistan and the Taliban, assisted by the United States. And on June 17th, the United Nations is debating proposals for the Taliban to be integrated into mainstream political life. So that is a real process in terms of exactly the strength of the Taliban is having to be taken into account. And certainly forces in the region are wanting to engage in a political process. As you know, Obama has got a general commitment to try and exit from Afghanistan, and it is, as David said, 18 months essentially since the surge, and that was the timescale for the surge. However, what's clear is that there has been an extended and major fight inside the American administration itself. Robert Gates expressed it this week when he indicated there shouldn't be a substantial